As usual, we gathered here today to listen to another dispensation of the Lord Buddha's teaching. The Supremely Enlightened One, who is the Master, the Omniscient One, the Unparalleled One, the Unequaled One, the Unvanquished One, the Undefeated One, the Perfect One, the Lord Buddha. It is because of Him we have the gift of Dhamma today. It is because of His infinite sacrifice in samsara, infinite dedication and commitment towards the liberation, emancipation of all sentient beings that we have the gift of Dhamma today. So in recognition of that fact, prior to us commencing this sermon, let us all take a moment to pay homage to the Lord Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Also, before we commence, let us take a moment to observe the 5 precepts. And as I have reminded you several times, as you take a moment to observe these 5 precepts, please take a moment to reflect on the fact that once again we are having to observe these. We are having to abide by these precepts because the virtue that is contained within these precepts, within the meaning, the essence of these precepts, is still not instilled within us. The day we become arahants, we will no longer have to observe precepts. So bearing that in mind, bearing the fact in mind that this is something I'm having to do, in the hope that may the day come where I no longer have to do this, let us all take a moment to observe the 5 precepts. I invite you all to chant the Namaskara Pata 3 times before we commence. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dutiyampi buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dutiyampi dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dutiyampi saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Saranāgamaṇaṃ sampunnaṃ, Pānāti pātā veramani, Sikkhapadam samadhiyāmi. Adinādāna veramani, Sikkhapadam samadhiyāmi. Kāmesu miccācārā veramani, Sikkhapadam samadhiyami. Musavahada veramani Sikkhapadam samadhiyami. Surameraya majjapama datthana veramani Sikkhapadam samadhiyami. Visaranena saddhim panchasilang dhammang sadhukang surakkitang khatva appamadena sampadeta. Okay, you may now all be seated. Also, prior to us commencing, let us take a moment to remind ourselves of the fact that there will have been many countless beings who will have helped us, supported us, assisted us, not just in this life but also in our previous lives, in many ways and shapes and forms. And perhaps the reason we are born human today is because of some kind of intervention by them, on their part. For all those dues that we owe them, we now have the perfect opportunity to repay them, as the gift of Dhamma excels all gifts. So, as we are now in the presence of the Dhamma, as we now have this opportunity to listen to the Dhamma, to understand and comprehend this Dhamma, let us extend this invitation out to Devas, Brahmas, spirits, demons and the dead, wherever they may be. If any of them are in a position to join us, any of them who have been born in the woeful plains are in a position to witness this meritorious deed and rejoice in the merits. And for those beings who are born in the blissful plane, who are looking for the Dhamma, seeking the Dhamma, on a quest to comprehend the Dhamma for their liberation, may this invitation open out to all of those beings to join us, to be here in our presence, to listen to this Dhamma, to witness this meritorious deed, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. So as I now make this invitation out to the Devas, Brahmas, spirits, demons and the dead, gods and deities and so on and so forth, I invite you to extend that invitation out in your hearts and in your minds. Wherever they may be, may they join us, listen to this Dhamma and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Samanta Chakravalesu Atra Gacchantu Devata Sadhammang Munirajasansa Sunantu Sagmokkadang Dhammasavana Kalo Ayang Badhanta Dhammasavana Kalo Ayang Badhanta Dhammasavana Kalo Ayang Badhanta. Let us also take a moment to remind ourselves that although I am dressed in robes and you in white, this change in our lives, this transformation in our lives was a result of the Dhamma, was the result of noble and moral associations which we were fortunate enough to receive. However, in our infinitely long history and journey in samsara, our associations have virtually always been with immoral and ignoble people. Immoral and ignoble people who defiled our minds with raga, dvesha, moha, desire, aversion and delusion, and blinded us with avidya and tanha, ignorance and attachment. Having been blinded, as such, even in the presence of the Supreme Buddhas, the Pacceka Buddhas, the Arahata Buddhas, Anagami, Sakridagamis and Sotapannas, be they on the path or having attained the fruits, we may have not been able to recognize their infinite qualities, their infinite greatness, and having been unable to do so, we may have insulted them, offended them, desecrated them, abused them. For any words of speech and thoughts of abuse that we might have directed towards them, the demerit that we will have acquired may today block and hinder our progress in the Dhamma. So, prior to us commencing this sermon, let us take a moment to seek forgiveness from the noble ones as well as from the Buddha's dispensation, the Sambuddha Shasana, for any words, speech or thoughts of abuse, slander, discredit that we might have directed towards them in our ignorance. May they forgive us for any abuse that we may have directed towards them. And finally, I request you all to make a firm resolve that through the course of this sermon, if there are any gaps in your knowledge, any gaps in your understanding, which is today the gap that you need to fill in order that you are able to achieve the state of Sotapanna, may this discourse, may this sermon help you do that. With that firm resolve in mind, I ask you all to prepare yourselves to listen to this sermon. Okay. It's probably the weather, right? Is it me or the weather? Either way, I thought, despite whatever circumstances, you have made an effort to be here, and that is not a mark of respect to me by any means. I don't expect that at all. But this is a firm resolve that you all have to fulfill this path, to walk this journey and bring this endless journey to an end. And I hope that is always your firm resolve, and that will always be the case. So, given that today we have few in number, perhaps I shall provide you the opportunity to ask questions. Because we have been discussing a lot of Dhamma over the last weeks, months. I don't know, how long have we been preaching now? Close to a year? Perhaps longer than that if you count the sermons we did when we were abroad. So, and of course there are some regular faces and some new faces, so you're all welcome. Guten Tag. But today I would like to offer you that opportunity to ask any questions that you might have related to the Dhamma that we've been discussing all this time. In your inquiries, I would suggest that we confine the remit of those questions to something that is useful to our path, to progressing the path. Because if we start our discussions and take them on avenues which are worldly and beyond the scope of what the Buddha really came into this world to teach us, then we are at risk of really going astray, going AWOL, and that would be a shame. Having said that, I will give you the opportunity to ask some questions, but I think it may be useful just to set the scene initially. So, perhaps a brief reminder of some of the things that we've been talking about so far. We've been talking a lot about this vexation, which was a crude translation for the word pelima that we have been using in Sinhala sermons. And for our non-native speakers, this is the feeling that we all experience, that feeling of unease, the feeling of disappointment, frustration, agony, despair, disappointment. A feeling that we are all way too familiar with, but not one that we are comfortable with at all, right? So, our journey and our path and our objective has to be, how do I put a stop to this? Yesterday someone came and asked me, in fact actually I asked the question, what do you think Buddhist philosophy is about? And I got a really good answer. So this person said, I think it's about achieving or understanding the ultimate truth. And I thought that was a perfect answer. And then I asked, what do you mean by ultimate truth? Is it knowledge about astrophysics or microbiology? What is ultimate truth? Why is it ultimate truth? Yes, I get what a truth is, but what's an ultimate truth? So then we got into a little conversation, and then what I explained to this person was that an ultimate truth is a truth that is true regardless. It's true for all. Doesn't matter whether you're a man or woman, black or white, tall or short, Asian or Caucasian, it really doesn't matter. Where you come from, where you're going, whether you're human, divine, celestial, none of that matters. Regardless of who you are, what your creed is, what your race is, what your religion is, what your philosophy is, it really doesn't matter. Because this is a uniform, a universal truth that is true for all of us. Recently, in a sermon that I was delivering, a question came to mind which I posed to the audience, and I think I'll do the same with you as well. So the question I have is, we know that when we speak of the ultimate truths, we speak of the Four Noble Truths that the Buddha proclaimed, he declared. Right? These are the Four Noble Truths, and we refer to them as being the ultimate truths. So my question to you is, we know that the Buddha, in our faith, in our conviction, we know that the Buddha was omniscient. What does that mean? He knows everything. He knows everything there is to know. In other religions, they believe in a God, an omniscient God that knows everything. That's okay. We're not against that belief. But what we understand is the Buddha was also omniscient. Whatever he knew, the totality of what he knew was everything that there is to know in this universe. And the totality of everything that is to know in this universe was the limit of what he knew. Works both ways. Whatever he knew, that's all there is to know. Whatever there is to know, that he knew. You get the point? So this is what omniscience means. So, having been omniscient, why does he focus his teaching on 4 things? I mean, he knew a lot. He knew so much. Why did he focus his teaching on just 4 things? Why not 40 things, or 400 things, or 4,000 things? On one occasion when the Buddha was traveling through a forest, he picks up a handful of leaves and he uses a metaphor. Or rather a simile. He speaks to he addresses his monks and says, monks, do you see all these trees in this forest? Do you see all the leaves on all the trees in this forest? What proportion of those leaves do you think I have in my hand? He asks this question. To which the monk says, Venerable Sir, how can we even begin to offer an answer to that? There's not even a simile that we could offer to answer that question. What you hold in your hand are just but a handful of leaves. Of all the trees in this forest, innumerable, virtually infinite. The number of leaves that you have in your hand compared to infinite is nothing. At which point the Buddha says, well, then let it be known that the Dhamma that I have taught to you, I have proclaimed, is much the same as the number of leaves that I hold in my hand. The Dhamma that I know is like all the leaves in all the trees in this forest. I shall not preach them. I'm not going to teach you everything I know. So you see, we have to then ask the question, well, when there was so much that he knew, why did he just speak about 4 things? All his teachings, 84,000 sutras, discourses you can find in the Tripitaka. And they're all centered on the 4 Noble Truths. Why 4? Why these 4? Ever wondered? Why? What do you think, sir? Okay. Any other responses? Okay. You see, we sentient beings, whether we are human or animals, humans and animals we can see, we can feel, we can touch, right? So let's limit our conversation to that. Forget celestial beings. Who knows, right? Who knows? We've not seen them, so I don't know. You could be forgiven for saying that, and that's okay. Humans and animals. Let's speak about these two. Both humans and animals, and humans of course we can relate to because we know and we've experienced. We suffer in two ways. We've spoken about this in the past, but this is just a refresher. A useful refresher because, we take detours, but we always have to keep our focus on that one path. Where are we going? Why are we doing this? Otherwise our detours can take us and we might get lost, and that would be a waste. So we all suffer in two ways. That's physically and mentally. Both animals and humans. We all suffer physically and mentally. Since time immemorial. When the first human came into this world, wherever they came from, don't ask me where from, because that is not something that is worthwhile talking about. Where did time start? When did the world come to being? Again, the Buddha could have spoken about that, but he didn't. That's a really interesting point there itself. There are certain questions the Buddha said, do not ask me these questions. Not because he didn't know. Because in simply explaining that or trying to explain that to somebody, we have a certain capacity to understand things. You can't teach Euclidean geometry to a 5-year-old because they don't have the mental capacity to understand that. At least not yet. There might one day be a day when that happens, once you've understood the background, once you've gone through certain qualifications and so on and so forth. Well, the day you become a Supreme Buddha, go ask another Supreme Buddha, where does the universe begin? And guess what? He'll offer you an answer. But the thing is, you won't need to ask that question then, because you will know for yourself. You'll know for yourself, so you won't have to ask that question. So the reason that he doesn't offer some of these answers, the reason he doesn't speak about some of these things is because it's immaterial. It's not necessary, it's not relevant. To what? What is it not relevant to? So again, we suffer in two different ways, physical and mental. Physical suffering, do we need a Buddha to help us solve? No. If I'm hungry, that's why we have farmers. Farmers, they milk their cows. Bakers, they bake bread. They grow crops. And they harvest their yield, and then they can feed us. You don't need a Buddha for that. There are doctors who are qualified and nurses who can treat us when we are ill, who can come up with medicine. Scientists, right? They do their investigations, they do their scientific experiments, and then they come up with all these wonderful ways to treat physical ailments, illnesses, and so on. Then there are masons and builders who are able to give us shelter. And then finally there are people who work with cloth and fabric, weavers and tailors and so on and so forth, who are able to provide us with clothing. So you don't need a Buddha to solve the physical problem. That's just mundane. Anyone can fix that. But the mental problem, not everyone can fix. Because every time we've been looking for a solution to this mental problem, this feeling of frustration, vexation, disappointment, agony, despair, pain, we've always sought happiness that was conditional. Right? Whenever we wanted to find mental happiness, we always ran after conditional things, in the belief that a conditional object, be that a sight, a sound, a smell, a taste, touch, or a thought, because these are the 6 things that we can experience. Anything beyond that is not within our scope. I can't see infrared. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to see it, because I don't have an organ that can pick up infrared waves. My eyes can only pick up light in the visible spectrum. My ears can only pick up sound within 20 and 20,000 hertz. Anything beyond that, anything below that, my ears are not sensitive. So if I want to listen to ultrasound, then I'm going to need a new organ. So really, I can only experience sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and thoughts that I can perceive through my six senses. The eye, the nose, the ear, the tongue, the body, and the mind. These are my six senses. So this is my world. We all have a world, don't we? What, this world? No, the world that we live in. Yes, we live in this world too. But that's the world that our bodies live in. The world that our minds live in, that's an entirely different world. That's the world that we fabricate. We create that. This world is our bodies live in this world. Our minds live in a different world. We create that world. We create that world with things that we like, things that we love. We bring those things towards us and we create our mental world. And the things that we don't like, we throw away from our mental world because we don't like them. This is the term I used in one of the previous sermons, pleasure world. We've all been to leisure world, right? This is pleasure world. A world that we all create mentally, using the things that we like and removing, extracting, discarding things that we don't like because they bring us unhappiness. And the things that we like, be that a person, an object, an event, an incident, it doesn't matter. A sunrise, that's not an object, it's an event. If I like the sunrise or the sunset, then the sunrise or the sunset is part of the mental world that I live in. Isn't that why you have a picture of it at home? A waterfall. You can touch the water, but can you touch a waterfall? No. But you have a picture of that at home. So that's an event. It's something that happens. And then there are objects. Things, physical things. Flowers. Furniture. Necklaces. Jewelry. Rings. Things that, these physical objects that we like, and therefore we create our mental world with them. And then there are people. Our mothers, our fathers, brothers, uncles, sisters, husbands, wives, daughters, grandparents. People that we are so attached to. But one thing is fundamentally true about all this. And that is, everything that we have used to build our mental world was something that we were attached to. Or we are attached to. Is there anything in your mental world that you are not attached to? Is there anything in your mental world that you are not attached to? Is there? No. Because we build our mental world. It doesn't get built for us. We build it. The physical world, that gets built for us. But the mental world, we are entirely responsible for building that. And because we have the responsibility for building that, when we have the choice to build that, we build this with the bricks that we like. We throw away bricks, we discard the bricks that we don't like. And these bricks are the sights, the sounds, the smells, the taste, the touch, and the thoughts that we like. So, this is an ultimate truth, is it not? Whether you're man or beast, whether you're black or white, whether you're a Muslim, a Hindu, a Buddhist, or a Christian, we all live in a mental world that we create for ourselves. And in this mental world, whether you're a religious person or an atheist, in this mental world we have something that is fundamentally true, universally true across everybody, across all mental worlds, and that is this mental world has been built with what? Things that we like, things that we have attached ourselves to, things that we desire. So that is an ultimate truth, because it's true for everybody. And for those who believe in divine beings, gods and deities and Brahmas, well, it's the same for them as well. An arahant, someone who has gone beyond the worldly, not physically, they also live in the physical world. But they don't create a mental world. Because what happens when you build something? If you're responsible for something you've built, let's say your house. If you built your house, what do you have to do after you've built it? What do you do every day, every weekend at least? Clean it, wash it. What's one word for that? Maintain it. Right? Once you've built it, you've got to maintain it. Question, why do we have to maintain it? Build it. Well, that should be the end of it. Why do I have to maintain it? Why do you have to fix leaking taps? Why do you have to fix leaking roofs? Why do you have to fix broken floorboards? Why all this? Why do you have to remove stains from carpets? Why all this useless, ridiculous, wasteful things? Does anyone enjoy removing wine from stained carpets? Anyone enjoy fixing a leaking tap? No, we don't like that. Anyone enjoy sweeping home? Hoovering? No, we don't enjoy doing that. But it's something that we are having to do. We are having to maintain it. But what if you were to visit somebody? You were to visit a friend. You visit a friend and you walk into their bedroom and you see it's quite dusty. Now do you pick up the hoover and start hoovering it? Well, at best you might say, hey mate, look at your bedroom. I think it needs a good hoovering. Just as friendly advice. Take it or leave it. I don't care whether you do it or not. Not my problem. Why? Not my house. You didn't build it, so it's not my duty to maintain it. The thing is, once we've built it, now it's my duty to maintain it. But why is it that we are having to maintain this? Because the world is not. You don't like to sweep. You don't like to clean. You don't like to wash. But is the world to your liking? No. The world is not to our liking. This is why we say the world is conditional. When there are conditions, you get that result. Whatever the result might be. 3 and 3 equals what? What would you like it to be? Is that what 3 and 3 equals? What each of you like it to be? How about you, madam? What would you like 3 and 3 to equal? And you, sir, what would you like 3 and 3 to equal? No one comes and asks you, what would you like 3 and 3 to equal? Because that is a fundamental law. Whether you like it or not, 3 and 3 gives you 6. Why? Because I like it? Because I don't like it? No, 3 and 3 is 6 because that is the law. That is the cosmic fundamental law. That is just the nature. That's just nature. That's just the way it is. Not because I like it to be the case. Now, what is true about all conditional things is because it's conditional, they only last in that way, in that state, for as long as there are conditions that allow it to maintain that state. Remember some weeks ago we spoke of air conditioners? Do you remember? Why is an air conditioner called an air conditioner? What does it constantly have to do? Condition. When we say it's 25 degrees in this room, that's a condition. That's a state. Not a condition, but rather that's a state. What does an air conditioner do? It provides the conditions to maintain that state. Using whatever magic it does within its machinery, it provides the conditions to maintain that state. And if you like 25 degrees C, well, great. But sometimes air conditioners break. Why? Because you like it to break or you don't like it to break? Why does it break? Which one of those two reasons is why an air conditioner breaks? Because you like it to break or because you don't like it to break? A, B, both or neither? Neither, right? Not because you like it, not because you don't like it, not because of both. It's neither. Because there are conditions that allow it to work, that keep it in that condition, that keep it in that state. And as soon as an air conditioner breaks or stops working efficiently, now what happens? Now you can no longer maintain those conditions. That's why it's called an air conditioner. It conditions the air constantly. Because there's a particular state that we like, and it helps us to maintain that state. Likewise, when we build a mental world, now we have to maintain it. But the problem with the mental world that we build is all these things that we used to build the mental world are conditioned. Think for a moment about some of the things that you have used to build your mental world. Parents, husbands, wives, spouses, fiancés, fiancées, children, boyfriends, girlfriends, teachers, loved ones. What else? Cars, houses. All these things that we were initially attached to, and then now that became part of my mental world. See, if I were to give you a picture of your physical world, it wouldn't be that difficult. Because the picture of your physical world is really whatever space you're occupying right now, and perhaps whatever property that you own. You know, if you have 6 lands that you own, well, fair enough. All 6 lands, I take a bird's eye view picture, here you go. Here's your physical world. But what about the mental world? Wouldn't you like to go to Mars? Some people do. Now, if I were to give you a picture of the mental world, I'm going to have to get Mars onto a photograph. Where else then? Next, Jupiter. Now what do I have to do? Go and get Jupiter onto a photograph. What else? Oh, well, I like the woman next door. Now? Oh, we're in big trouble. See? Because there's no limit to the mental realm. You can go as far as you like. That's why the Buddha says, Durangamang ekacharang asarirang guhasayang. The mind can go as far as it likes. There's no limit. That far and that's it. No. Because when you're a magician, you can perform any magic you like, right? All you need is a hat and a wand. Now, what's the limit to what you can create? Limitless. If you want a rabbit, out comes a rabbit. If you want a parrot, out comes a parrot. If you want a biscuit, out comes a biscuit. Oh, you're a magician. You can perform whatever trick you like. From the perspective of the observer, I mean. Clearly, as we know, a magician needs his tool. So, if there wasn't a rabbit to begin with, there's not going to be a rabbit in the hat. That we know. Because we know that magic is a trick. But to the observer, a magician can do all sorts. There's no limit to what a magician can do. Likewise, as long as there's this magician that's within our mind, Vijnana, the wizard that lives within our mind, this wizard is able to create all types of worlds. If I were to ask you, where would you like to go on holiday? All I have to do is ask the question. Each of you will have a picture in your mind right now. I guarantee. Each of you will have a very vivid picture. Some of you may like the beach. And then you will have images of the beaches that you went to, and of the beaches that you went to, the loveliest beach that you saw, and perhaps that was the beach in Gaul. But then the turtles that you liked were not in Gaul, they were in, I don't know, wherever, Handapangoda. So now you have the turtles from Handapangoda on the beach in Gaul. And then the coconut trees, they came from Hikkaduwa. Right, now you have the beach from Gaul, turtles from Handapangoda, and the coconut trees from Hikkaduwa. And you say, here's the holiday that I'd like to go on. Now, where on earth can I go and find that holiday for you? That place does not exist. Because it's a mental fabrication. Because there's no limit to how far the mind can go and create all this vivid imagery. But the problem is, once you create that mental vivid imagery, now you attach yourself to it, and now that becomes your world. And you now seek satisfaction. You seek happiness. Your pursuit of happiness is now through this world that you have built for yourself. But the problem with this is, it's all conditional. And the problem with attaching yourselves and building a world with conditional things, like we spoke last week, remember, we spoke of building sandcastles on the beach. Do you remember the example we used? Sandcastles on the beach. What's the problem with building sandcastles on the beach again? Well, it's the beach that you're building the sandcastles on. As soon as the water rushes in, then that's going to wash the sandcastle away. Now, if you are so attached, if you are obsessed about building sandcastles, if that was your world, my sandcastle, well, the problem is you're building it on the beach. And you're using sand, which is washable, in the water. So is the fault with the water? Is the problem with the sand? A child builds a sandcastle. As soon as he builds it, water comes, washes the sandcastle away. Now he starts crying. Who does the child blame? Or what does the child blame? Why is the child crying? Bad, bad, bad sea. Bad water. Right? Or bad, bad, bad sand. He thinks the problem's where? The sand and the water. Is that where the problem is? Where's the problem then? It's building the sandcastle using sand on the beach. Stop doing that and no problem. So the reason that the Buddha spoke to us about the Four Noble Truths, and the reason that he used this as his fundamental teaching, every teaching that he delivered since then, he connected it to the Four Noble Truths. Why? Because the physical problem, there are lots of people outside in the world that can help us. There are scientists, there are teachers, there are farmers, there are mason workers and construction workers. They can help fix that problem. But the mental problem, which is the result of attachment. Disappointment arises through attachment. That nobody sees, except for a Supreme Buddha, without someone else's instruction. People don't like loved ones dying, and they think the problem is with death. People don't like loved ones leaving them. They think the problem is what? Being left. That's where we think the problem is. But really, where's the problem? In attachment. Because parents die all the time, children die all the time, people break up all the time, but none of us cried. That's because we weren't attached to them. So to really show that it's attachment that leads to suffering, now that requires supreme wisdom. Really think about your own lives. Before you listen to the Buddha's teaching, right? Did you ever really think that it was attachment that caused me suffering? Every single time we cried, didn't we always point our finger outwards? You made me angry. You made me cry. You stole what I love, therefore you are at fault. You are to blame. Wasn't this every time where we pointed our finger outwards? Every time. Every single time. But the Buddha says, why are you pointing the finger at something that is faultless? The problem's not with the outside world. You ought to be pointing the finger inwards, because attachment is not something that happens on the outside. Attachment is something that happens on the inside. In the mind. The mind is what attaches to sight, sound, smell, taste, sounds and touch. And the moment you attach yourself to something, now you're in a state of vexation. This feeling of uneasiness, this feeling of I want what I have now attached myself to. And remember I said the other day, if I were to take a picture of the things that you are physically attached to, right now, I could give it to you because we've got camera. Scientists have produced technology that can take pictures. Well, great. But that only shows the things that you're physically attached to. But if I were to take a picture right now of the things you are mentally attached to, how much paper will I need? How many reams of photograph will I need to give you a picture of that? How many hours of video footage will I need to capture all the things that you are mentally attached to? Infinite. Not realizing that it was attachment that brought us suffering, what did we do? We went and attached ourselves to things. Every time we cried because of something that we were attached to. We never cried, we never wept, we never lamented or got angry because of losing something or somebody that we weren't attached to. Isn't that an ultimate truth? Isn't that true for everybody? A female dog cries when she realizes that her puppy has been hit by a car, by a moving vehicle. Well, she's crying because it's her puppy. It's her litter. Well, she never cried because of the female dog next in the neighboring town got its puppies run over by a car. That didn't happen. What if she was informed, hey, did you know that there's a puppy, next door, in the neighboring town that got run over? Not my problem. Why? No attachment. So it's attachment that always brings us suffering. And that is a fundamental truth. That is an ultimate truth. Because we suffer two ways, physically and mentally. Physical suffering, there are lots of people in the world who can help us. But mental suffering, not knowing that it's attachment that causes it, we go about trying to treat the wrong problem. Like last week I offered you the example of someone who's got a disease. Right? What do they treat? The disease or the symptoms? The symptoms. If you don't know that I have been infected by a bacterium, then you're not treating the disease, you're treating the symptoms. Because what you can see, what you can feel are the symptoms. I can feel I've got a cough, I can feel a temperature, I can feel a rash. Because I can see it with my physical eyes. Because I can see it, because I can feel it, because I can experience the suffering, now I'm going to go and find some treatment for my cough, for my cold, for my fever, for my rash. But until you realize that it's the bacteria that got ingested, which was the cause for this ailment, this disease, this infection, you're only going to be treating the symptoms. This is why you need a doctor. You visit the doctor does his scans, and then he says, well, I'm not saying don't take cough syrup, I'm not saying don't take paracetamol, but really you ought to be treating the disease, which is the bacteria that you've ingested. So I think you ought to take this prescription which has antibiotics written on it. It doesn't matter how many tablets of paracetamol you take, you're not going to be treating the disease. Doesn't matter how many liters of cough syrup you drink, you're not going to treat the disease. Doesn't matter how many tubes of cream you apply all over your body, for how long, it really doesn't matter, because you're not going to be treating the disease. To treat the disease, you have to take this antibiotic, because that is the root for the problem. Likewise, when we attach ourselves to things, from that point forward, from that moment on, now we start suffering. Remember the girl in class? She was just another girl. The day that girl came into this world was not the day that I thought, wow, she's pretty, I'd like her to be mine. That's not the day she came into this world. She was always there. If she was 20 years of age when I first saw her, when I first had this crush on her, well, she was there for 20 long years. And all the times that she suffered, she had illnesses, she had fevers, she had temperatures and colds and coughs and diarrhea. Never was my problem. But now she takes out her handkerchief and she blows into it. Now it's my problem. She had diarrhea before I got to know her. Not my problem. Now she has a common cold. Big problem. So is the problem with the diarrhea or is the problem with the common cold? Where's the problem? It's attachment. It's neither the common cold or the diarrhea. That's not the problem. To her, of course, it's the diarrhea. But to me, in my mental world, it's attachment. And as soon as I'm attached to something now, I want what it is that I'm attached to. What we desire. Now we want to acquire what we desire. This is all, hopefully this is bringing back some of the old stuff that we spoke about, because it will give you a good foundation, and then I'll open up for questions. Now we want what we desire. We go through the process of acquiring what we desire. And actually yesterday I had this thought that came to me. There are two words which are used in the same expression. You don't get what you desire, you get what you deserve. You don't get what you desire, you get what you deserve. That's a common phrase, we've used it plenty times, right? When do we use the word sire? I'm glad I'm doing this sermon in English. When do we use the word sire? When you address someone who's usually of royal descent. Majesty, your sire. How may I be of assistance? Sire. So usually someone we say who's a sire is someone who has a big self, a big ego. Usually a king, someone who is in a royal state, has a big ego, a big me that has to be fostered, that has to be nurtured, right? That's a sire. Then what does serve mean? To give. When you're a sire, now you want to grow the me, you want to grow the self, like a king who demands taxes from his subjects. Bring me what I'm your sire, I'm your majesty, I'm your king. You shall serve the king by providing me with taxes, the fruits of your hard labor. You shall serve me by providing me as much as I ask, as much as I demand, because I am the sire. So once you're a sire, it's not a feeling of wanting to give. It's a feeling of wanting to acquire. There's no giving in sire. There's only taking in sire. Desiring. What about deserving? Serving is to give. You serve someone some food onto a plate. That's serving, to give. To give something that you have, give it away. That's serving. Now the Buddhist philosophy is, the more you give, the more you get. And it applies to all things. Whether it's food, rations, or the Dhamma, or even noble association. The more you give, the more you get. So, is it not right then to say, you don't get what you desire? Because really, when you become a sire, now you're always demanding of others. Hey, give me, give me, give me, give me. What do you have? Give me. I'm your king. You're my subject. Give me. Come on, give me. It's always give. I want. Attachment. Right? I'm attached, so give me. But what about to serve? I'm letting go of my attachment. And then giving. What would you like? Here, let me serve you. What else would you like? Let me serve you. Serving is to give what you have to somebody else. Now, which of these two ways do you think you're really going to be receiving? If you really want to receive, according to the Buddhist philosophy, his teaching, is it by acquiring what other people have, by demanding what other people have, or actually giving up, giving what you have to others? Which is the right way? Which is the correct, the true way to receive? To give or to demand or to give? It's to give. So is it not right then to say you don't get what you desire, but you get what you deserve? Because when you serve, well, you will get it back. What you want, you will get back. But what happens if you're a sire? You can keep demanding, but not for very long. Not for very long. But as soon as we have an attachment to something, now we are desiring of it, and now we want to acquire it. And in our wanting to acquire something, now we go through this abhisankara process, which is conducting our mind, our speech, and our body for the activity, the exercise of acquiring what it is that we now desire. And when we do that, with the ignorance, this is a really important point that I want you all to think, that I want to think in all of your minds, in your intellectual. When you have attached yourself to something, and now you are desiring of it, and now you go through the process of acquiring it, by engaging your speech, body and mind, by doing all these activities to acquire it, you now receive sight, sound, smell, taste, touch and thoughts from the outside world. Because in our ignorance, we believe, through delusion, we believe that pleasure, happiness exists where? In the outside world, right? Happiness is in the outside world. Happiness is in the sights that my eyes can see. Happiness is in the sounds that my ears can hear. Happiness is in the smells that my nose can experience, my nose can smell. Now when we receive them into my world, at that point, because that was the thing that I was attached to, I am now relieved from my vexation. I am now relieved from my vexation, not because I received that particular object. It's not because I saw a particular sight. It's because that sight which I was attached to came into my world. This is a very subtle point. I'll give you an example which will help you better understand this. Let's say we're all feeling hungry. Why do we feel hunger? When there's no food in our stomachs. That's when we feel hungry. And our gastric juices start seeping out, and then they start working their magic on our guts. Right? That's when we start feeling hunger. So, in simple terms, when there's no food. Now, we've all experienced hunger. When you're feeling hungry, to relieve someone of hunger, what needs to happen? Go on, it's a really simple question. What needs to happen to relieve someone of hunger? Eat what? Something. That's the key word. Does it have to be rice? Does it have to be bread? Does it have to be noodles? Could it not be grass? Could it not be battle feed? Or rather, cattle feed even? Food that you serve cattle? Cows? Could it not be water? Well, as soon as something goes into your stomach, now it's no longer empty, therefore now you feel relief from hunger, right? It doesn't have to be what? It doesn't have to be any particular type of food. It could be anything. But the thing is, normally what we do is we don't go eating grass. What we do is we eat rice, we eat noodles, we eat bread, we eat, all these things that we have come up with, scientists have produced into this world through their culinary expertise. Is it right then for us to come to the conclusion that it's the rice that relieved me from hunger? What relieved me from hunger? Something. Something relieved me from hunger. It doesn't matter what it is. What if you fill your stomach with rubber bands? What's going to happen then? Are you going to be feeling hungry? No. Of course, you're going to be pretty ill soon after. But if we are only focusing on this problem of hunger, it really doesn't matter what goes in. Provided something goes in, you have now relief from hunger. It doesn't have to be rice. It doesn't have to be any particular type of food. But generally, it's rice or curry or hoppers or string hoppers, or it's a normal type of food that we eat. Now, for someone who always eats rice, is it right for that person to come to the conclusion that, it's rice that relieves me from hunger? Is it right for that person to come to that conclusion? No. But if he were to say, it's rice that relieves me from hunger, is that a wise statement or an ignorant statement? It's a statement full of ignorance. Because it's not the rice that relieved him from hunger. It's just something. It just happened to be rice. It just happened to be whatever food that you put into your stomach. Likewise, when you're in a state of vexation, what relieves you from vexation are the sights, the sounds, the smells, the tastes, the touch and the thoughts that come from the outside world. Does it have to be sights and sounds and smells and tastes and touch? And thoughts? Well, it just happens to be that these are the things that exist in the outside world. What if we went to Mars? Right? And they don't have sights or sounds or smells or tastes or touch or thoughts in Mars. They have something, something completely different. Let's say they have... What? Some people might get even more confused. My example is confusing enough. Let's say they have something completely different. It's not a sight, it's not a sound, it's not a smell, it doesn't have a taste, you can't feel it, and you can't even think about it. But it's there. That's what people in Mars, aliens who live on Mars, Martians, that's what they consume. When they feel hungry, they just consume that substance, whatever it is, but it doesn't have a sight. When you tap it, there's no smell, there's no sound. You put it on your tongue, there's no taste. You hold it to your nose, there's no smell. You touch it, you can't feel it. You can't perceive it through your five senses. But it relieves you of hunger. Or you put it in your stomach, it's still something, right? And it relieves you of hunger. So is it sights and sounds and smells and tastes that relieves you of vexation then? Or is it just something coming in? It just happens to be the thing that you were attached to. If it's the thing that you were attached to, it doesn't matter what it is that you were attached to. It will relieve you from vexation. That's the point. It doesn't matter what you're attached to. Whatever you're attached to, when it comes into your world, you will be relieved of suffering, of vexation. It just happens to be that the only things that are there in the outside world are sights and sounds and smells and tastes and touch and thoughts. That just happens to be a coincidence, really. I'll give you another example to help really understand this point. For those of you perhaps in the medical profession or in a related field may be able to relate to this pretty well. Do you know of the placebo effect? Have you heard of that? Let me explain. Someone gets a griping stomachache. It's pretty bad, right? So this guy goes to the doctor and says, "Doctor, I've got a really bad stomachache. I really need your help." Now, let's imagine for a moment that this doctor is a specialist in stomachaches. If there is a stomachache, then this doctor knows of that. A stomachache that this doctor doesn't know of does not exist. Let's make that assumption. If there is a stomachache, then this doctor knows of it. A stomachache that this doctor doesn't know of does not exist. Okay? So he does his scans, blood tests and whatever test that the doctor does, and finally says, "I've examined you thoroughly and I can confirm that you do not have a stomachache." That cannot be the case. Now he's an expert, and using our assumption we can come to the conclusion that, this guy does not have a stomachache. But he's adamant. He says, "No, I don't care what you say. I have a stomachache. I can feel it. It's alright for you to say I don't have one, but I can feel it. I have it." Now, if there is no stomachache that is not within the scope, within the remit, or within the knowledge of this doctor that can exist, then can we not come to the conclusion that this stomachache really does not exist? Can we not come to the conclusion that this is an entirely mentally fabricated experience that this patient's feeling right now? Because it's not a real stomachache. Because if it were, then the doctor would have picked it up in his scans, right? All with me so far? Okay. So, what the doctor does on this occasion is he says, having tried to explain to this patient on several attempts, and the patient is not willing to accept that he doesn't have a stomachache, what the doctor says is, "Actually, you know what? I do know of this particular stomachache which very few people really experience in this world, and I know that there's a pill. It's very rare. It's very hard to find this pill. Let me get it for you. And I think that is probably the stomachache that you're feeling right now, because we've run all the tests and I've excluded everything else, so it has to be that." Now the patient thinks, finally you know what I'm talking about. Finally I found a doctor who's come to his senses. Thank you. Because all this time, although the doctor knew that there was no problem, the patient wasn't willing to accept that. Why? Because it's a mentally fabricated illness that he's feeling right now. The stomachache really does not exist. So what the doctor does now is he brings a pill. And it's just wheat flour. It's just flour. Not a flour, not this kind of flour, wheat flour. Oh, let's say vitamin C. Okay, just to make it easy, to keep it simple. It's just a vitamin C tablet. Vitamin C tablets never cured stomachaches. There's no vitamin C tablet on this planet that can cure a stomachache. Am I right? Yes. But what this doctor says is, this is the pill that's going to cure your stomachache. I know it. This is, I think, the first or the second time I've met a patient like you. Your condition is extremely rare. But thankfully, I've got this pill for you. Take a couple of these pills. Take it for a couple of days and you'll be fine. So this guy takes this pill home. He doesn't need a couple of days. He takes it one night and the next day he's fine. Why? Because did the stomachache really exist? No. It was entirely a mental fabrication. That is what a placebo is. You can find this word in the dictionary. It's a placebo pill. Because there is no medicinal effect in that drug that can cure this illness. It's just a support for this patient that thinks he's got a problem. That's all it is. Likewise, you love it when I say likewise, right? Likewise, when someone's in a state of vexation, because it's a mental fabrication that there is pleasure, where? In sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touch and thoughts. Where is this? On the outside world. Because there's ignorance and delusion that dictates to this person that pleasure and happiness exists in the outside world. Now he's just looking for whatever. I just need it because I think it's there. Therefore I need it. So the moment you give it to him, then he feels good. Was there any effect in the sight that cured this person? This happiness or prettiness exists in the sight? Is this a pretty flower? Is this a pretty flower? There are purple flowers and there are white flowers. Which one's prettier? Go on. Which one's prettier? Can you answer that question? Well, you can, can't you? Let's be honest. Let's not fool ourselves. Yes, I can answer that question. I can answer that question. I'm going to say it's a purple flower. Why? Because of my delusion. I'm going to say it's a purple flower. But I can guarantee, I can vouch that there's someone in the audience thinking, what do you mean the purple flower? Look at the white flower. It's gorgeous. Are you mad? Look at it. Those pesky small flowers, purple. Who likes purple anyway? It's the white flower that's pretty. Look at it. It's beautiful. Now for me to think it's the purple flower and for you to think it's the white flower, does prettiness exist in the flower then? Is prettiness an attribute of the flower? No, because if it were, then we should all agree, we should all come to a consensus that yes, it's in the purple flower. Ah, there's prettiness. I've just seen it. It's in the purple flower. We should all be able to say that unanimously, right? But do we? No. Why? Because it's entirely subjective. Your world, if you like the white flower, has white flowers in your mental world. In my mental world, I have purple flowers. That's why. I'll tell you something really interesting. I won't say funny, it was interesting. That happened it happened week Saturday. I don't know if I shared this story with you, about a couple that came and spoke to me. Married couple. No? Okay. This was a really interesting experience. I found it funny, but I'm not sure if they found it funny. So, young couple, I think they've been married for 2 or 3 years. They listened to the Dhamma, so they were understanding of what it was I was trying to explain to them. At the end of the sermon, they came and sat down and they were speaking to me, and I said, remember I asked you, I gave you that example of walking to the barber, to the salon and asking for a loaf of bread. I've given you that example in the past, right? Everyone remember? Yeah, going to the barber, going to the salon and asking for bread. And none of us have ever done that in our lives because it's a bad thing to do. Why? Because there's no bread in the salon. Bread is not something that is sold at the barbers, in the salon, right? That's why we don't go to the barber. So, with this couple sat down, I asked the gentleman, sir, have you ever gone to a salon and asked for bread? And he says, no, Bante, I've never done that. And then I turned to the lady and asked, madam, so this is your loving husband. You respect him, you love him dearly, and so on and so forth. If there was ever a day when your husband walks into a salon and adamantly insists, I want bread and I'm not going to leave until you give me bread. If your husband were to ever say that, what conclusion would you then come to about your husband? Exactly. She says, well, on that day I would have to think that he's gone nuts. Right? He's gone mad. That's the conclusion I'm going to have to come to on that day. I read, okay. Then I said, well, sir, look at these flowers. I pointed at some object or the other, and I said, likewise I'm saying, look at these flowers, and I asked him, which of these two flowers is prettier? He says, well, the truth of the matter is, I really cannot answer that question because I understand now, having listened to the Dhamma, that beauty does not exist in the flower. So I cannot really say that the purple flower is prettier or more beautiful than the white flower, and I get that. I said, okay, great. Then I turned to the lady and again I asked her a question. I said, Madam, before this man married you, wasn't there ever a time when he came to you and said, oh my God, you're so beautiful. You're the prettiest woman I've ever seen in my life. Has he or hasn't he ever said that to you? And she said, well, plenty of times. So then I asked you a question, madam. You told me just a moment ago, if your husband were to go to the salon and ask for bread, you'd think he's gone nuts. Now he admits that prettiness or beauty does not exist in the flower. The same man walks up to you, looking at your figure and says, you're the most beautiful person I've ever seen. Does beauty exist in the person? In the figure? No. Well, if you then say a moment ago that this guy's gone nuts to have gone into the salon and asked for bread, when he looked at you and said, you are the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, what conclusion do you think you ought to come to then? Well, come to think of it, she said, Bhante, I'd have to say he's gone mad. And then I asked the question, finally, madam, what would you call a person who marries a madman? Well, a mad woman. I mean, isn't that the case? Think about it really. When we walk up to a sight, a sound, a smell, a taste, or a touch, and we say, oh my God, you are so pretty. Wow, you're just gorgeous. Look at you. You're so beautiful. Does beauty exist in the outside object? Does it? Because if it did, then you'd have to take that same object and go and ask two different people. Ask a sample of 100 people. Bring two women. A sample of 100 people. Which one do you think looks prettier? Don't say it, write it down on a bit of paper and put it into the ballot box. You take a count at the end. Well, what are you going to find? The answer is going to be what? It's going to be split. There's going to be a split. Some are going to say it's this girl, the other's going to say it's that girl. Well, for that to be the case, well then beauty cannot be an attribute of the person. It cannot be an attribute of the sight, the outside object. It cannot be. It's entirely subjective. Is that not right? Yes. And the same goes for sounds. Did I give you the example, did I tell you about going into a zoo and listening to birds chirping? Do you remember that? A guy walks into a zoo and he goes to the aviary where there are birds, right? All types of birds, and he's listening to these birds and they're chirping and they're bird songs and he's like, oh, beautiful birds and what a lovely noise they make. So he's really enjoying this. Only because of what? He doesn't understand what they say. If you really were to go and listen to a bird in a cage, and if you are able to understand what the bird's saying, what do you think the bird would be saying? Singing beautiful songs for your pleasure? You wretched thing! How dare you bring me and cage me in like this? I lived such a free life with my family. Look what you've done to me. To hell with you. Isn't that what the bird's going to be saying? But because we don't understand it, we listen to this with the noises that the birds make. Ah, beautiful. Oh, beautiful. So then again, does beauty exist in the sound? No. Some people like to listen to rock music. Others like classical. Why? Because beauty does not exist in the sound. Pleasure does not exist in the sound. It's very subjective. For it to be subjective, we can only come to one conclusion then. That pleasure does not exist in the outside world. However, The problem is, for as long as we are ignorant about this, we take a delusional stand, a delusional viewpoint, and we come to the conclusion, no, beauty is there in the outside world. Look! What do you mean it's not there? See, beautiful flowers. And they make me so happy looking at them. So if my happiness is then dependent on these flowers, what do I have to do then? Make sure that those flowers are in my possession. Well, what happens if those flowers belong to you? Now I have to find a way, by hook or by crook. See, leaning towards the unwholesome deeds, the unmeritorious deeds, killing and stealing and backstabbing and lying and slandering, frivolous speech, all this leads from where? This foolish, ignorant view that beauty exists in the outside world, pleasure exists in the outside world, happiness exists in the outside world. Ladies and gentlemen, happiness is not a factor of the outside world. The outside world cannot give you happiness. The outside world cannot give you happiness. Why? Because I say so? Is it because the Buddha said so? This should be becoming obvious to you. Now it shouldn't matter whether the Buddha said that or not. All things considered, even the Buddha was just a vehicle for the Dhamma. True, granted, it's in his mind that this Dhamma arose. But he only spoke of something that was universally true. He didn't make this up. He didn't make up the truth that if you attach yourself to something, taking a delusional, ignorant view that happiness exists in the outside world, then from that point forward, you become the security guard. Now you're in a state of vexation. Now you're suffering. What might happen to it? Who might take it from me? Might someone steal it from me? Might someone run away with my girlfriend? Really think about it. Think about the times when you were in relationships with other people. Did you never for a moment think, when you were starting to have a crush with somebody, might she give me the kick? Might she dump me? Might he dump me? Have you ever experienced that? Well, then you haven't lived life. All these are things we've experienced. But all that frustration only arose from the moment that we planted the seed of expectation. The plant planted the seed of attachment. That's where every single mental problem started to come up from. Nothing else. Until we understand this, we are going to be treating the outside world. The wounds on the left leg, where are you applying the medicine? On the right leg. How much medicine on the right leg is going to treat the wound on the left? How much? How many hours of physiotherapy is going to fix a problem on the left leg if the physiotherapy is being done onto the right? $100 hours? If the fire's here, why do we put water over here to try to put out the fire? The fire's over there. We put the water there. Not here. There's the fire. So the problem is with attachment, not the outside world. This is why last week I was trying to explain to you the difference between dukkha and dukkha. I was trying to explain to you the difference between dukkha and sankhara dukkha, dukkha and viparinama dukkha. A lot of people come to believe that this world is suffering because it's impermanent. That is not the Buddha's teaching. Now, yes, the Buddha did say that most things in this world is impermanent. Not everything though. 3 plus 3 equals 6. For how long? When does 3 and 3 stop being equal to 6? In how many eons time? 50? No, that's the truth forever. A triangle has 3 sides. For how long? When does that become impermanent? When does that change? Never. That's just the way it is. That's just the law. That's the Dhamma. That's just the way it is. Every man or woman that comes into this world dies one day. The fact that everyone that's born dies, when does that change? Never. So is that impermanent or is that permanent? That's permanent. That's the permanent truth. But it's not permanence or impermanence that brought us suffering. What brought us suffering is the fact that this world was never to my liking. This world was never to my liking. This world was entirely conditional. My liking was never a factor of that equation. Take a fire, for instance. Wood, as in a flammable object, a flammable substance, oxygen, and the required temperature. Provided you provide these three factors, who here can stop a fire from being lit? Anyone? There's enough oxygen, there's the flammable substance, and then there's enough temperature. The required temperature for the fire to ignite. Who here is capable to stop that fire? The Buddha? No. Nobody. Why? Because the fire does not light due to the Buddha's liking. That's why he cannot stop that. If the causes are there, then you're going to get that result. Well, fortunately, even dukkha, this problem that we create is also conditional. What if it weren't conditional? What if dukkha wasn't conditional? Then we'd all be stuffed. We'd all be stuffed. What is dukkha again? It's the disease. Dukkha is the symptoms. Dukkha is the symptom. Sankhara dukkha is the symptom. Viparinama dukkha is the symptom. For those who have not heard those three words before, dukkha is this suffering that comes after you've attached yourself to something. You buy yourself a new car. Now you become the security guard for this car. It's now your problem. If there's a bird that flies over and puts poop on the windscreen, now that's your problem. So you're always you're always worried what might happen when you start. For those of you who've driven in Sri Lanka and on streets on Colombo, how much fear comes into your minds when you pull the car out of the garage, and now you're on the street because of how people drive and the traffic problem that we have. Nothing's happened to the car yet, but still there's always this fire that's burning. So what if? What if someone jumps in front? What if someone applies the brakes without warning? What if someone drives too close? What if someone pulls up in front of me without warning? All these what if questions. When did these questions arise? When the car was in the showroom? No. Those questions were still there, not to me, the owner of the showroom. Why? Because who did the car belong to then? The guy at the showroom. You see, when they transfer the keys, they're not just transferring the keys. They're not just transferring the keys. They're transferring a whole lot of suffering along with it. You just don't see it. When you're signing the paperwork, here's the money, here's the car. It's not just the keys, it's not just the documents that you get with it. There's a whole bag full of suffering that comes with it. Well, alas, we are blind to it. And then there's sankhara dukkha, which is the dukkha, the suffering that is involved in the effort that you have to make. No one likes going and getting out loans. Anyone take out a loan for fun? No, but when you want to buy the car, now you have no choice. You go and get the loan. Or you have to work nights. You have to work long shifts. No one enjoys doing that, but you have to. Because if you did really enjoy doing it, then you'd be doing it anyway. Without the car, you'd still be doing it. But it's when you have the prospect of the car, the promise of the car, the promise of being able to acquire what you desire, now you're prepared to do these things. Because these are things that we weren't prepared to do beforehand, because we knew none of this was happening, none of this was fun. Therefore, then surely if it wasn't fun then, it can't be fun now. Just because now you're doing this to achieve something that you like, can't mean now all of a sudden this has become fun. Taking an objective view, it can't be fun. That can't be fun. So that is all sankhara dukkha. And then whatever we attach to, attached to or not attached to, all of that passes away. But it becomes a dukkha, it becomes a viparinama dukkha because of the attachment. So all these three, dukkha dukkha, sankhara dukkha and viparinama dukkha, the reason that we go through all this, we have to feel, we have to endure all this pain is because of the attachment that came beforehand. As soon as attachment came in, everything else starts coming in line. So that was a reminder of some of the things that we've been speaking of lately, and a few examples as a refresher for some of you. I'll pause for any questions you might have. You don't have to have questions, by the way. There's no must. I just thought because it's few in number today, then I'll give you a chance to ask questions if you have any. Yes, sir.
Everything that we have attached to is the potential source of dukkha.
Yes.
Even if we forget about it, it is a potential dukkha.
Absolutely. Because the dukkha arises as soon as you attach yourself to it. So it's a potential source of dukkha dukkha, sankhara dukkha and viparinama dukkha. The moment that you attach to, whether you're cognizant of it or not, it could be locked away in your drawer. Perhaps at this moment in time you have let's say you've got a gold ring that was an heirloom from your grandparents, and it's in your drawer, locked away. You don't even know about it. It's still there. You just don't know about it. So the dukkha is still there. It just hasn't surfaced yet, because we are not talking about it just yet. But let's say someone's broken. You get news that someone's broken into your house. If that's the most precious thing that you have, even if you haven't been thinking about it day in and out, the moment you get news that someone's broken in, now all those thoughts start to surface. Oh my God, what might have happened to my ring? Might someone have taken it? Because it's like ambers under the coal. It's just ambers, red ambers. You just need to throw some fuel onto it and a flame. The fire's not out yet. The fire's there. You just can't see because there's no flame. The flame is experiencing the dukkha dukkha, sankhara dukkha and viparinama dukkha. The ambers that lie there, that's the dukkha. Really good question you asked, because it brought out that example as well. Those red hot ambers, like when you make a barbecue, right? I don't do that now, but I used to. When you have a barbecue, sometimes you no flames. It's just the ambers, and that's enough heat. So you don't want the flames, right? So the flames are there, but the moment, let's say, some oil drops from the meat, what happens then? Now the flame starts again. The flame comes up, and now you can see the flame. Now if you put your hand there, it's going to burn you. Where you're standing, you can now start to feel the fire. You may not be able to feel the ambers from where you're standing, but as soon as the flames start to come up, now you're going to start to feel it. Likewise, these ambers, these are the things that we are this is attachment. This is the dukkha, because dukkha is again conditioned. Thankfully, this is what I said before. Dukkha is conditioned thankfully, because it's only conditioned things that you can do something about. The reason I used the example of the fire earlier, the only reason that you can put out a fire is because of what? It's conditioned. If the fire weren't conditioned, you would never be able to put out a fire. How do we put out a fire? You might throw water on it. What are you doing by throwing water on it? What are you taking away? Temperature. Because the fuel's still there, oxygen's still there, but you're taking away what? Temperature. Because water absorbs the temperature, and it evaporates. In that process, it absorbs the temperature from the fire, right? So that puts out the fire. So what you've done, it's not the throwing of the water that puts out the fire. It's the taking away of the heat. That's what puts out the fire. That's a really important point to understand. It's not throwing water that puts out the fire. It's taking away the heat that puts out the fire. Because if it were water, then we would have to come to then lack of water is going to be a condition of the fire. Lack of water is not a condition of the fire. What are the three factors that contribute to a fire? Flammable substance, oxygen, and temperature. These are the three things. Lack of water? No. That's not a factor. But what happens when you put the water? One of the factors that a fire is dependent on is taken away. As soon as you take away at least one of those conditions, that's enough. You don't have to take away all three. Just take away one. The last time someone you know died, why did they die? Because their brain stopped working, their lungs stopped working, their heart stopped working, the liver stopped working, kidney stopped working, intestine stopped working, because all of them stopped working. How many of these things needed to stop working? If it is a vital organ, just one. Brain stops, no, that's enough. Heart stops, that's also enough. You don't need the brain and the heart both to stop. No, one's enough. What does that imply then? The brain, the heart, and all these vital organs are all conditions for this person to be alive. Take away one, that's more than enough. Likewise, dukkha, this dukkha, this problem that we are trying to solve, which is the first noble truth, the first ultimate truth, dukkha are satya. Remember, it's not dukkha are satya. It's dukkha are satya. It's not sankhara dukkha are satya. It's not even viparinama dukkha are satya. It's just dukkha are satya. Because that is what someone without the help of a Buddha, or someone who has seen the Dhamma through a disciple of the Buddha, is not able to see. This is why I asked you at the beginning, did we ever in our lives, through our own wisdom, think that it was attachment that brought us suffering? No, we never thought that. We can never come to that understanding without the help of a Buddha. Therefore, the first noble truth, this is one of the ultimate truths of dukkha arya satya, the first noble truth of suffering, is not the suffering of someone dying. It's not the suffering of someone falling ill, breaking a leg, breaking an arm, getting a wound, getting a stomachache. That's not the suffering. Because everyone knows that that's suffering. You don't need the Buddha's help for that. You ask a non-Buddhist, you break a leg, happy or sad? What are they going to say? Happy? No, that'd be madness. They say, no, that's sad. I don't like that. That's suffering. But so then, therefore, then that cannot be the dukkha arya satya that the Buddha taught us. The dukkha arya satya is this conditioned entity that we create. It's not an entity that you can touch, by the way. You can only think about it. You can contemplate on it. You can't perceive it through your eyes or your eyes, nose, and through your five senses. You can only contemplate through it. You can only perceive it through your mind, because it's something that is perceived by the intellect, by intellectual capacity. And that is, all things in this world are conditioned. Attachment to a conditioned world equals what? Dukkha. It's attachment to a conditioned world that causes suffering. It's not the conditioned world that causes suffering. Remember, once I invited you to go and attach yourself as much as you like. To what? Something that's not conditioned. That's okay. Attach yourself as much as you like to something that's not a sight, something that's not a sound, something that's not a smell, something that's not a taste, something that's not touch, something that's not a thought. Go and attach yourself as much as you like. Go fill your boots. You will be happy forever. But the problem is there such a thing? Well, that thing is Nibbana. That is what Nibbana is. Nibbana is not a world that we go into after life. It's not an after-death experience. That's not what Nibbana is. This proves that Nibbana is not an afterlife experience. If dukkha arya satya is explaining that this entity is the product of a conditioned world and attachment, when does and the second noble truth is the cause for this dukkha is attachment, not the conditioned world. Tell me then, when does suffering come to an end? Does attachment cease the moment you die? Does attachment stop, cease the moment you die? No. Well, if attachment is the cause for suffering, and it doesn't happen automatically when you die, then how can Nibbana be an afterlife experience? Do you get the point? Let me repeat. If dukkha is an entity which is the product of attachment to a conditioned world, when you die, does the fact that this world is conditioned come to an end? No. When you die, now this might require some belief in life after death. Okay? Let's assume that there's life after death. You don't have to believe it, but let's just assume there's life after death. If attachment stops the moment you die, or rather, does attachment stop the moment you die? Because one of these two things has to become zero. X times Y equals 1. And now equation here. Okay? X is the fact that this world is conditioned. So it's a 1. A conditioned world is a 1. Attachment is a 1. 1 times 1 is what? 1. 1 is suffering. So 1 on X is what? Conditioned world. If it were a 0, it would be an unconditioned world. 1 on attachment is the presence of attachment. If it were a 0, no attachment. 1 times 1 equals 1, and the 1 here is suffering. 0, no suffering. The only way, well, there are two ways that we can make this. Well, actually, there are three ways that we can make this 1 a 0. Either X has to equal 0, or Y has to equal 0, or both X and Y has to equal 0. These are the only three ways that you can do this. So, either you have to change this conditioned world to an unconditioned world, that's making X 0, or you have to stop attachment, that's making Y 0, and that's also okay, that also works. Or you have to do both. Change this world to an unconditioned world and stop attachment. But you don't have to worry about that. I mean, why bother with two when you can just work with one? You don't have to fix both problems, just fix one problem. But which of these two problems can we really only fix? Changing X to 0 or changing Y to 0? Y to 0. So if changing Y to 0 is what we are trying to do, does that happen when you die? No. Death does not equal cease attachment. Ceasing of attachment happens when we are alive, when ignorance has been uprooted. So that can really only happen in a mind that is alive. It cannot happen in a dead person. A live mind has to be there. A live being has to be present for that. For attachment to stop, because attachment is something that happens in a live mind, not in a dead mind. So then really, attachment turning from 1 to a 0 happens in a live person. So let's say someone lives up until the age of 80. They're 50 years of age now. On their 50th birthday, Y turns from 1 to a 0. Is there suffering from that point forward? No. Did they have to die for attachment to become 0? For suffering to become 0? No. Because it's not conditioned world, attachment, and being alive equals suffering. That's not the equation for suffering. Attachment to a conditioned world equals suffering. You can't change the fact that this world is conditioned. That's just the way the world is. The only thing you can really influence is attachment. And why do we attach ourselves to things? Because of ignorance. Ignorance of what? Which of these two flowers is more beautiful? For as long as you can answer that question, ladies and gentlemen, whether you speak it out vocally or you think it in your minds, for as long as you can answer the question when I ask you which of these two flowers are prettier, I can guarantee that you are suffering. So really, from this day forward, you can do your own test before you leave this room. A final check after the end of the sermon, whether this test will confirm whether you have to come back here or not. Before you leave, look at this flower, this vase, and see if you can answer the question, which of these two flowers is prettier. If you have an answer to that question, then you had better come back next week. If your response at that point is, sorry, I don't get the meaning of that question, that question is meaningless. Because beauty does not exist in the flower, so I cannot answer that question. Then you will have become a victorious one. You are now an arahant. You will no longer have to come back here. See, you don't need my help now. I've given you a really simple test. Check for yourself. Before you leave today, look at this vase and check which of these two flowers is prettier. I can still say that it's a white flower. You have to come back, sorry. Or you said it's a purple flower. Sorry, you're going to have to come back. One day you say neither of them, because that question is meaningless. You don't have to come back. Simple test. You can do it yourself. For as long as we take that view, then there's a problem there. Because beauty does not exist in the outside world. This is why I said, thinking back about that placebo, right? That pill did not have it had zero medicinal effect on that illness, on that disease. It wasn't the pill that cured this person. It was the belief that it's the pill that's going to cure me. For as long as this guy had that thought, the pill's going to fix me. It was that distorted view, or the distorted perception, or the distorted consciousness. Because distortion comes in three forms. Either view, perception, or consciousness. It's one of these three things. And once you've broken the distorted view, then you're on a good journey. Now you've embarked on this path, the Noble Eightfold Path. Now when you're on that path, now you know, if you know for a fact that beauty cannot exist in the outside world, ladies and gentlemen, when you look at this flower, you might still feel, actually I can still sense that it's the white flower that's prettier. But you know that is not the truth. Great! That's really good that you know that there's a problem now. Because up until now, we didn't even know there was a problem. Not knowing the problem is the biggest problem of all. Because then you can't fix it. You don't want to fix it when you don't know that there's a problem. But when you know there's a problem, now you want to fix it. So once you know that there's a problem, once you look at these flowers and you can still feel, one's prettier than the other, but I know that cannot be true. If you are absolutely crystal clear on that, without a shadow of a doubt, then your distorted view has been eradicated. You have now stepped into the Noble Eightfold Path. Sammaditthi. Right view. If I give you on a plate a slice of pizza, and what food do you not like to eat? What food do you not like to eat, madam? Sweet and spicy. Okay. Without sweets and what else is there to eat? Okay. So a slice of pizza on one side and let's say chocolate on the other. There's someone who does not like chocolate at all, but they love their pizza. When I offered both of these to you on a plate, forgetting the fact that lots of chocolate is going to damage your teeth, it's too much sugar, that is not good for you. Forgetting all that, because all of that is for the physical problem. That's not the mental problem. Too much sugar hurts who? The mind or the body? That hurts the mind. Too much cholesterol hurts who? The mind or the body? That's the body. So that's the physical problem. Forget all that to aside, because that's not the problem we're trying to fix here. It's the mental problem we're trying to fix. So pizza on one side and chocolate on the other. You don't like chocolate, you like the pizza. You look at it and go, I'll have the pizza, please. Both of these can sate your hunger, but you have a preference. You're going to have to keep coming back here. The day you go to the restaurant, you get up, you get the menu, and the waiter comes and asks you, what would you like to have today, sir? And then you start going through with your index finger, going through the menu. You're going to have to keep coming back. For as long as you're going to have to keep going through it, no, I don't like that too much. That, maybe. Let's check the other one first. For as long as you're going to have to do that, you're going to have to keep coming back. I don't mean to this monastery. I mean, you're going to have to keep going back to the Dhamma. Because your arahanthood has not yet been fulfilled. Because as an arahant, you feel hunger. Which of these items of food can sate your hunger? Only the first 10? No, any of them can. So it really shouldn't matter which one goes in. Anything can go in. And I've said to you in the past, sometimes, even today I found it quite interesting when we were taking alms. There was a really young kid, I think he was about 4 or 5 years of age. He came running towards me and he was stood by me, next to me as I was sat down taking alms, and he was looking at my alms bowl, probably quite perplexed. He was wondering, why on earth are you eating like that? Because when we get served into our alms bowl, we've got rice and pudding and papadums and curd and honey, and there's everything in the alms bowl. Well, if I've only got one stomach and they're all going to go into the same place anyway, what difference does it make which order they go in? It's not like I have 3 stomachs into which first the starters go, then the rice goes into the second, and dessert goes into the third. If that were the case, then it's worthwhile eating them separately. But it all goes into the same place. Try this out yourself sometime at home. Maybe don't do it in public. Because if you find that revolting, then you might throw up. And that's not really nice in public. Okay, don't try with food. Let me suggest to you this. I've seen sometimes people, they've tea. They've taken their tea and there's just a little bit left, but it's dried up now. Because they haven't washed their teacup at the end of the tea. An hour passes by and now they want to take some water. And they're reluctant to put water into the same teacup and drink it. Not because there's now bacteria in the tea. That's not the problem. Because what happens when the tea dissolves in the water? Now water starts tasting a little bit like tea. I don't like that. Well, where did the tea go to an hour ago? The same place where the water is going right now. So if they're both going to the same place, what difference does it make which order they go in? Right? Because if the purpose of consuming food is relief from hunger, relief from thirst, then what order do they have to go in? Does mains have to go before the dessert to relieve one from hunger? Says who? Says an ignorant mind. That's who says. Not the stomach. Not even the tongue. I mean, to be quite frank, when you look at your plate, there'll be lots of different types of food on your plate. If I were to mix them all up, how many of you would be prepared to start eating it? One plate, mix everything up, all the curries mixed up, now start eating it. Perhaps not many. But what do you do when you mix everything up and put it into your mouth? If you're either using your fingers to eat or a spoon, what do you do with your spoon? You mix everything together. What do you do with your hand? You mix all that food together. Dal and malum and chicken and fish and egg and this and that, and everything gets mixed. Now what happens? Now it's all together. It's just a moment ago they were split out separately on the plate. So when you start to realize that there's a problem with this, now it's time to start fixing it. Because if it's relief from hunger that you seek, then it really shouldn't matter what orientation, how your food is served. Do you sometimes, when you go get served, do you turn your plate before you start eating it? Just to make sure that the curries are on the outside, the rice is in the center, and as you put your hand, there's no curries on your side of the plate? Why? Why do you have to turn your plate? Why can you not just start from wherever? Because if it's hunger that you are trying to fix, how does food have to go in to fix your hunger? Which order do they have to go in? When you take your pills, right? Let's say you take some pills at night, before bed or whatever, for your cholesterol or diabetes or blood pressure or whatever. Don't you fully, happily, without any reluctance, take them all together in one sip? Everything together, handful, put in your mouth, drink a glass of water. Why don't you drink one, then take the next pill? All goes in together. How so? Because it really doesn't matter which order they go in. But if the doctor were to say, no, you've got to take your diabetic pill first, and then 6 hours later you have to take the blood pressure pill, and then 2 hours later you have to take the cholesterol pill, and now you have to take them in that order. But if the doctor has not prescribed that, then it doesn't matter what order they go in. Take it all together, one gulp, water, job done. True or false? So when we realize that these are things that we are doing out of habit, then we are beginning to spot habits that we have to try and break. That's not to say that when you are at home you have to eat like that. That's not to say that when you go somewhere you have to mix everything together and eat your pudding with your rice. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am trying to say is, if you were expected or if you were supposed to eat like that, even that should be okay. If you are not okay with that, you still have to keep coming back. Because there's still a way for us to go. Once you become an anagami, it doesn't matter what your food tastes like. Because the only reason I'm taking my food is to sate my hunger. The only reason I'm taking this drink is to quench my thirst. Nothing else. Why? And why so? Because are there good tastes and bad tastes in the outside world? No. Some like their tea with sugar, others hate tea. Others hate sugar in their tea. They only drink dark tea. No sugar, please. Thank you very much. With sugar, throw that away. I can't sip it. I can't even drink it. So which type of tea is a better tea then? One with sugar or without sugar? Objective or subjective? Subjective. If it's subjective, then does it exist in the tea? No, it exists in our mental world. We're all mental. That's the problem. It's all mental. Just because you think something's there doesn't mean it's going to be there. If you walk up to a shop to buy something, right? You ask the shopkeeper, I want, here's my shopping list, I want so much of this, so much of that, so much of this, and so on and so forth. He now packs it all into bags and gives it to you and says, how much, you ask? And he says, right, that will be 5,500, please, sir. Now you start checking your pockets. Oh, my money, where's my money gone? You start checking your pockets, knowing fully well that you've left your wallet at home. You know that, but you're still checking your pockets. A moment later the shopkeeper goes, oh sir, it looks like you left your money at home. Would you like to bring it back later? And then you say, no, hang on. I'm sure I've got money in my pockets. Okay, the shopkeeper says. And he waits a few more moments. And you're still checking your pockets. 2 minutes later, you're still checking your pockets. You've turned your pockets inside out and you're still checking your pockets. And then the shopkeeper says, sir, I think we can come to the conclusion that you have brought no money with you. Would you like to go back home and bring some money? If you were to say at that point, no, but I think I have money, so therefore I should have money. I think I should have money on me right now, therefore there should be money. Are you sane or insane? Insane. To think that you should have it because you think you have it. Isn't that why we look at this flower and say one's prettier than the other? Isn't that why we look at a girl and say she's pretty or he's handsome? Because we think it's there. But does thinking or having that belief has to do anything? Does it have to do anything with if it's there or not? No. Whether we like it or not, whether we think so or not, whether we know it or not, none of that matters. If it's there, it's there. If it's not there, it's just not there. Not whether you like it, not whether you know it. But through ignorance we come to believe, we come to think that it's there. So, just because we think it's there, should it be there now? No, it's never there. It was never there. It's never going to be there. Thinking that it's there, what do? We attach. And then, all kinds of suffering start flowing our way. See, it's always internal, this problem. See, once you realize this, where do you have to go to fix this problem now? Who do we have to fight with? Who do we have to tell off? Someone shouts at you, makes you angry. Whose fault? Someone says a bad word. There are things as bad words, right? Foul words, foul language, and that hurts your feelings. Whose fault? Well, the birds, what were the birds doing in the cage? They were swearing their heads out, and you were perfectly okay with that. They were swearing their guts out, and you were perfectly okay with that. Why? Because it was with you, it was determined whether what you're listening to is blame or praise. It was determined with you, not outside. From the outside, that was just sound. How many songs did Michael Jackson sing? How about Elton John? How many songs did he sing? Okay, how many songs did Maestro Amadassana sing? You count 1, 2, there's that song, there's that song. Did they really sing any songs? None of them sang any songs. What did they do then? They made some sounds, some noise. Well, let's not use noise because that could be offensive. Sounds. Sounds were released into the air, into the world. What did we do? In our minds we listened to those sounds and then we fabricated the song within us. So really, who should they have as composer? On every track that you listen to, on every track you see on TV, lyrics by, well, even the lyrics. The lyrics and the music, all of that, composed by whom? The listener. Not the hearer, the listener. What about a movie? How many movies I can't remember their names now. It's been a long time. How many movies have you seen and how many movies have you watched? How many movies do they show in the cinema hall? In a given month, how many movies do they show at the cinema? Do they show movies at the cinema? No. We go and open our eyes and we take in all those sights and then we start to direct in our own minds. So who really should have the name as director? Ourselves. Every single time we fabricate this world within our minds. We fabricate it according to our liking, our wishes, our desires. That's why one guy likes one actor, the other guy likes somebody else. One likes Salman Khan, the other likes Shah Rukh Khan. Why so? Who's the better actor? Who can make that call? The actor or the fan? It's the fan. You can't make that call. As in, the actor can't make that call. Because it's subjective. Why do they take votes? Who's the better president? Now that's objective or subjective? Subjective. That's subjective. Because who do you like better? The moment you ask, who do you like better? If you can answer that question, then you still have to keep coming back. If you're walking along the street and you see two ladies and you think, she's pretty, more than the other, you still have to keep coming back. You walk into the restaurant, you've been given the a la carte menu, look at that and you go, I like this better than the other. You still have to keep coming back. You will decide to grow flowers at home. You think roses more than, what else do they have? Daffodils. You have to keep coming back. Keep coming back. Not to me. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying come back to me. I'm saying you have to keep coming back to the Dhamma. Because there's still further that we have to go. There's still further you have to go on that path. Because beauty, once again I repeat, I want to emphasize this point, ladies and gentlemen, because this is where we always got it wrong. Always. Beauty does not exist in the outside world. People say beauty is skin deep. That's not true. Beauty was never in the skin. If it was skin deep, then, flog someone and get the skin, put into a bag. Now what? Beauty? No, that would be beast. Beauty is not skin deep, but beauty lies in the eye of the beholder. Now that is true. That is so true. Beauty lies in the eye of the beholder. Said who? Possibly an arhat. Maybe one in England or wherever. There's one other thing I want to get you to think about, and then we'll conclude the sermon. Now, when we speak about pleasure, clearly it's something that we can all feel, right? That's why, the Buddha says the reason that all sentient beings keep going round in samsara is because they can feel this pleasure. Right? I give you a slice of pizza, you're not even hungry, and now you're starting to feel hungry all of a sudden. So you're sensing pleasure, so no question there. Now, most of the time when people come up to me and they say, they say, Swaminatha, I'd really like to check myself if I've understood the doctrine. Would you mind listening to me and I'll explain to you what I think I've understood? So some people come and do that with me. I say, yeah, sure, go ahead. So some people say, that I realize that being able to sense pleasure, there's something wrong with it. Because an arahant never would experience pleasure. Why? Because there's no vexation. And therefore, if there's no vexation, there's nothing to be relieved from. Yeah? All with me so far? There's no vexation to be relieved from, no suffering to be relieved from, therefore there can't be pleasure. Pleasure is always relief from suffering. Yeah? Relief from a headache is pleasure. Well, you had to have had the headache in the first place. When you scratch yourself and you got a rash, that's pleasurable. But you have to have had the rash in the first place. No rash, scratch yourself. Is that pleasurable? No. Quite possibly it's going to be annoying a little bit. So pleasure is always relief from suffering. So when people come and speak to me and they say, could you help check if I've understood the doctrine correctly? And I say, right, explain to me. And they go, the problem that I see, so this is them explain to me. They say, the problem that I see with pleasure is that it's relief from vexation. So vexation or suffering was there beforehand and it was relief from that brought me pleasure. I see that as being a problem. I say, yes, that is true, that is a problem. And they say, let me continue. Sure, go ahead. And then they say, this pleasure that I have now given rise to is going to pass away in a moment. So this is very momentary, and it's going to pass away. And I see that as being a problem. And I say, yes, that is true as well. So the fact that you have had to go through a lot of effort, go through the abhisankara process, and also that you were in a state of vexation prior to experiencing this pleasure, and it's relief from that suffering that brought you this pleasure is a problem. Yes, no doubt about that. And also this pleasure that we have now given rise to is going to pass away momentarily. That is also a problem. Yes, agreed, that is also a problem. So when someone asked me this question, I asked them a question in return. And I said, what if, this is a hypothetical scenario. I said, what if I were able to freeze that moment of pleasure? I freeze time. Now there's pleasure and I have frozen that moment of pleasure. True, you've had to go through make some effort to acquire that pleasure, and you have now been relieved of the suffering that was there beforehand. Yes, that's true, that's all gone. But now this pleasure is not going to pass away. It's going to be there, fixed, frozen. What would you say about that? Is there a problem with that? That's what he said as well. Okay, good. What else? Any other thoughts? Beg your pardon, sir? It is its nature. But what I'm suggesting is, through some supernatural power, okay, I've got this magic wand. I've got this magic winnowing fan. I don't have a wand. I've got this magic winnowing fan, and when I do that, it's going to stop the passing away. That moment of pleasure is going to be frozen, and you're going to experience that forever. Now, is there a problem with that? Is there? Let me give you an example. There's a wealthy man. He's got a lot of money. I go to him and say, you've got a lot of money, right? Yes, I'm a very wealthy man. I say, you've had to work really hard to earn this money, haven't you? He says, yes, I've had to work really hard to earn all this money. A lot of labor, a lot of pain, a lot of toil to earn this money. And then I asked him, so all that was hard work, pain, you didn't really enjoy that, did you? No, actually, that was quite a lot of suffering, so I really didn't enjoy that. But now you got a lot of money. Yes. And you were happy about that. Yes, I'm very happy about that. Then I say, well, what if there's you get robbed? What if there's a fire? What if there's there are floods and all of your property, your wealth gets destroyed? Well, if that were to happen, then of course that would bring me a lot of suffering. But right now, I've got this money and I'm wealthy. So I propose to him then, I'm using my magic winnowing fan, and I will guarantee that your money will never be lost. You will not be robbed. Okay? You will not be robbed. And there will not be any floods or fires that's going to destroy your money. So this money that you have, it will be there forever. How do you feel about that? I ask him. And he says, yes, just like you said. Yeah, no problem then. Until I proved to him that all that money was monopoly money. Have you played Monopoly? Fake money. Paper money. Play money. Now, if I've proven to this guy that this money that you have in your possession is really fake money, play money, is his problem right now that he's had to work really hard to acquire this? Is that his problem right now? Is his problem that in a short while, I might get robbed, there might be floods, there might be storms, there might be fires that might destroy my money? Is that his problem right now? What is his problem? All this money is useless. It's fake, pointless, meaningless. So even if I were able to swing my magic winnowing fan and stop the destruction of that money, stop that money from being lost or destroyed, is that still any good to this person? Is it any good to this person? No, because although he thinks he's wealthy, that's just play money. That's false money. That's not real money. You can't really do anything with it. That's false money. Likewise, this moment of pleasure that we experience. And as I was explaining to this person who was asking me, he said the problem with pleasure is that I have had to go through a lot to acquire this pleasure. And I was in a state of vexation from which I will have to relieve myself. That is the problem, he said. And also he said, this moment of pleasure I'm enjoying right now, well, in a moment's time it's going to pass away. He said, that's the problem. Now I suggested, well, now you're talking about a problem in the past and in the future. What about the present? Because if you're only seeing a problem with the past, which is I had to go through a lot to earn this money, to get this pleasure, and I was in a state of vexation, after which I was able to relieve myself, that is why I'm enjoying this pleasure right now. Well, you're talking about a problem that existed in the past. Now you got the pleasure, so what's the problem then? Why worry about the past? And also if your problem is going to be, well, this moment of pleasure I'm enjoying right now, it's going to pass away in a moment. Now you're talking about the future. It's not come yet. So why worry about the future? Because for as long as you think, or your perception is about a problem in the past and in the future, ladies and gentlemen, you're only going to be frustrated about vexation and suffering. You are not going to be frustrated about pleasure. That moment of pleasure that you are experiencing right now. The Lord Buddha says the reason that we all go through this transmigrational process in samsara is not because of the suffering on either side. It's because of the pleasure that we enjoy at every moment. That point in the middle. That is why we go through in samsara. Because we can experience that moment of pleasure. But what if that moment of pleasure was pleasure that we sought by gaining a happiness that we thought came from the outside world? Does that really exist? Wasn't this now fake money? Isn't this monopoly money now? I'm thinking it's the flower that brings me happiness. I'm looking at the flower, oh my God, that's so beautiful. Is the problem that I had to open my eyes to look at it, so it was a lot of effort to look at it? Is that the problem? It is only part of the problem. In a moment's time I might go blind, then I won't be able to see this flower any longer. That's also only part of the problem. That's just the sankhara dukkha and the viparinama dukkha. But what you're saying is, well, I'm looking at the flower right now, so surely that shouldn't be a problem. I'm enjoying this moment. Let me enjoy my moment. But what if this moment of pleasure you're enjoying right now is also fake? Because you're looking at a flower and expecting happiness from it. Does happiness exist in the flower? Does beauty exist in the flower? No. So that moment of happiness is also fake. It's a false. It does not exist for real. It's purely a fabrication of ignorance and delusion. Now how do you feel about that? Now is the problem that I had to work hard to get it? Is the problem that it's going to pass away in a moment? Or is the problem that what I'm enjoying, what I think I'm enjoying right now is also fundamentally flawed? There's no essence to enjoy right now. This is just completely rubbish. There's nothing here. It's nonsensical. When you begin to understand that point, that perspective, when you come to that point of view, then you begin to become frustrated about not the vexation that came in before and the vexation after. Now you're becoming frustrated. Kalakirin. About what? This moment of pleasure that you're experiencing right now, because even that is false. If I were to offer you another example, let's say there's a couple and the husband, so they have a child together and they work hard to bring up this child. The father particularly hard. He toils day and night, works long shifts, trying to do the best he can for this child. He goes through a lot of work, lot of pain, and so on and so forth for the happiness of this child. One fine day, someone comes and says, "Mister, did you know that this is not your child? I just found out that your wife's been cheating on you. This is not your child. You are not the father." If we can prove that to that father, Is the problem to him right now that he went through a lot of hard work to bring up this child? Is it the fact that this child is going to be taken away from him? Or this moment where he thinks this child is my child, I love this child, look at it, so beautiful? Even that becomes painful. Even that becomes, my God, what was I thinking? This is not my child. He feels that he's been tricked. He realizes he's been fooled. He's been taken for a fool. Now he loses all trust. Absolute trust is lost. And similarly, this moment of pleasure that we experience, that we think oh my God, beautiful flower, look at it, it's beautiful. Why do I have to worry about having to open my eyes? That was in the past. I'm going to go blind in a moment, that's the future. But the present moment, beauty does not exist in the flower. Then why am I opening my eyes and looking at it? If it's not there, if beauty is not there in the flower, and beauty is what makes me happy, why on earth am I looking at a flower? It's okay to look at something that has beauty. If beauty is what makes you happy, look at something that has beauty. What has beauty? Or the person in the mirror? If beauty is what makes you happy, then look at something that has beauty. What has beauty? Nothing. Then if beauty is what makes you happy, tell me, is there anything in this world that is worth looking at? No. Why? Because there's nothing in this world that can give you beauty. Because beauty is not an attribute of outside objects. It's purely a fabrication in the internal mind. It does not exist in the outside world. So now if you listen to music and you think, I like that song, I don't like that song very much. That song I like a lot. What are you really saying? That beautiful music exists in the outside world. Now you are prepared to bring up another man's child. That's what you are saying. In other words, you are going to the salon and asking for a loaf of bread. You are getting married to a woman who is barren and expecting to have children with her. All these examples, whichever you can relate to. A man that wants a child, is there any point in getting married to a woman who's barren? No. Why? Because she can't give you that. She does not have the capacity to provide that. Likewise, looking at a flower, looking at an object, a sight, and expecting to find happiness by looking at it is entirely pointless. So for someone who's looking for happiness in their life, because remember, way back when we started doing these sermons, where did we start our conversations? What is your purpose in life? And what did you all tell me? Happiness, right? Has that changed now? Are you looking for something else right now? Or are you still all looking for happiness? We're all still looking for happiness. Does happiness exist in sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touch? No. Then why open our eyes and keep looking at the world outside? Why do we keep turning our heads, scanning the world? Happiness. Oh no, happiness over there. Hey, happiness over there. What's this? Haven't we been fooled? Completely ignorant? Delusional? Isn't this insane? See, the problem is we keep going round in samsara for something that does not exist. That's the problem. I don't know how you feel, but I feel like I've been struck by lightning. I don't know how you feel, but I feel like the ground beneath my feet is beginning to shake. My knees are beginning to tremble. Because I'm beginning to realize that all my years in my life, I've been going after happiness by going after all the wrong things when none of those things ever had happiness to offer me. I went after money, I went after women, I went after food, I went after sights and sounds and smells and tastes. None of them really had happiness as a part of them. And despite that, I went after them. I went after barren women asking, can you give me a child? They said, no, I can't offer it to you. But no, I want it, so give it. I went to salons asking for bread. I don't know about you, but I feel like my whole world is beginning to crack open. What is the point of this existence? If the only thing that is there in a thought process is vexation and relief from vexation. Vexation none of us like. We don't have to argue or debate about that, right? None of us likes vexation. What if pleasure is also just a fantasy? Who likes to live a fantasy? It's not there. It's false. It does not exist. Who here wants to live that kind of life? Well, if those are the only two things that we can go through in life, vexation and relief from vexation, or pleasure, which is also fake, then none of these things, two things really bring us any happiness. Then what is the point of even having this thought process? What is the point of these chittas arising and passing away? I just want happiness. Nothing brings me happiness. So what's the point of this existence then? What is the point of this existence? I don't know if you're getting the point I'm trying to get across to you. Existence is fundamentally overrated. This is overrated. Sights and sounds and smells and tastes and the pleasure that people seek from these things are completely overrated. Because they do not have them. We should protest. We should go picketing. Against whom? The sights and sounds and smells and tastes that we always fell for. All these things that we thought, beautiful world, my God. A pair of eyes that haven't seen these sights aren't worth having. That's what we thought. What's the point of living if you haven't been to Alaska? What's the point of having these two eyes if you haven't been to wherever? If you haven't seen the Taj Mahal, what's the point of having these eyes? People said. If you haven't listened to Bob Marley, what's the point of having these 2 ears? People said. And when the more I begin to feel, all of that was just complete and utter. I can't use the word that I would really like to use after that. Starts with a B and ends with a T. Completely nonsense. Completely madness. Completely meaningless. Completely essenceless. Tell me, ladies and gentlemen, what is the point of my continued existence? When happiness is what I seek, and nothing in this world can give me happiness, what is the point of my existence in this world? Sir? Yes. Once you understand this, you will no longer go seeking happiness from this world. That is why an arahant doesn't keep looking around as he walks. It's not because people might think bad of him, because there's nothing to look that can give him happiness. So continue to contemplate on what I have tried to explain to you there. I don't know if I'm using the right words to express what I want to convey. Sometimes I worry about that. Because the Buddha's teaching is so profound. Sometimes I'm really fearful to sit on this seat. Because I take permission, I seek permission from him before I sit here and seek his permission to preach this Dhamma to you. His Dhamma, not mine. He is the master. I seek his permission to preach to you, and sometimes I'm fearful. I'm worried that perhaps I use the wrong words. Perhaps I don't get across the meaning to you. I'm fearful, I'm worried. Like it might be a curse to have preached you something that the Buddha did not. So I don't know if I'm using the right words to convey this feeling that I have within me. If I were able to show you my mind, I would be able to tell you everything. You would be able to see everything I wanted to say to you. This existence is meaningless, ladies and gentlemen. This existence is pointless. Existence, life itself is pointless. That's not to say, now go hang yourself. Because remember we talked earlier, death does not turn Y from 1 to a 0. Death does not stop attachment. Attachment can only cease in a mind that is alive. So you have to be alive to put a stop to attachment. Once you put a stop to attachment, that is Nibbana. Whether you are alive or dead. So continue to contemplate on this. If it's the last thing you do. Because not understanding this was the root of all suffering in our entire life in samsara. Every single time. Not understanding this truth. This is why it is then ultimate truth. A truth that only a Buddha saw. And a truth that only a Buddha can preach and proclaim to this world. Because without his help, none of us would have known this. Without his help, we would have always sought happiness in the sights and the sounds and the smells. When they don't really exist in them. Why? Because all we have associated with is what? Ignoble and immoral people. And when they found happiness by looking at a flower, what did they come and tell us? Flowers. Beautiful. Look. Isn't that how you got into your certain hobbies? You were influenced by your friends. When I was younger, I used to collect telephone cards. I loved collecting telephone cards. Because someone said, hey, aren't they lovely? So true. Then I started collecting coins and notes. Why? Someone said, aren't they lovely? Interesting, aren't they? Yes, so. All I did was collect sights and sounds and smells and tastes and touch and thoughts. When none of them brought me happiness. I was fooled, I was tricked. This is the biggest foolery, biggest trickery of all time. So if you want to, because I can't force you to, if you want to, then penetrate this truth. Penetrate this falsehood, penetrate it. Make every effort to do that. Penetrate this falsehood and try to see the truth that lies behind. Because once you see it, you will be frustrated. Not frustration meaning you'll then go and live at home and not talk to anybody and live a sad life. That's not what this frustration is about. You'll be frustrated about the things that you thought was going to bring you pleasure. You'll be frustrated about pleasure itself. And with that, attachment will cease. You will no longer have to forcefully stop attaching to things. Attachment will cease automatically. Because ceasing attachment is not something that you can do forcefully. It happens through understanding. It happens with right knowledge. Through comprehension. And for that, all you need to do is to continue to listen to these sermons. I don't mean my sermons. Just listen to the Buddha's teaching. Wherever it may be you receive it from. Whether lay or clergy, it doesn't really matter. Someone who's understood it, go and listen. Someone who preaches it, go and listen. Whether it's tapes or on the internet, it doesn't really matter. For as long as what they speak of is the flow, is the blunder with raga, dvesha, moha. With attachment, the flow with attachment. And for as long as they speak of that, and for as long as their speeches, their sermons help you to eradicate attachment, to see the useless nature of attachment. Does an arahant have attachment? Don't they live happily? Is there any problem with them? So is attachment required for a good life? No. See? That's just extra baggage. If you don't need attachment to lead a good life, if you don't need desire, aversion and delusion, raga, dvesha, moha to lead a good life, to lead a happy life, which we know from looking at an arahant, then that is just extra baggage. You don't need it. Useless. So raga, dvesha, moha is also useless. Attachment, useless. None of these things are conducive to happiness. In your pursuit of happiness, the only thing that can give you that is eradication of attachment. Eradication of raga, dvesha and moha. That's it. Nothing else to say. Even if I speak to you for another 10 hours, 10 days, 10 weeks, 10 months and 10 years, this is the only thing I'm going to have to say to you. Attachment is pointless. A life living is not worth living if you don't make effort to rid yourself of the attachment. So reflect on the things you've learned today, or you've got to hear today. Contemplate on these things as you live your life. Go back and listen to this if you get a chance. What do I mean by if you get a chance? Well, you can decide. If you get a chance, if you have the time, listen to this again and again and again, and the penny will drop. You are not just any old folk. I don't accept that. You are special. Not just you guys here, but also people listening online. And you particularly. Because you have this opportunity to listen and sit down and listen face to face. That's not a chance that everybody gets. Not because I'm special. Please don't get me wrong. Wherever the Dhamma arises from, wherever the Dhamma comes from, to be in the presence of that Dhamma, to be able to listen to that Dhamma face to face, or at least live, that is a privilege that we have not enjoyed throughout our journey in samsara. So you're not just any old people, you're very special people. And think about the privileged lives that some of you will have lived up until now. Perhaps some of you received them as gifts from your ancestors. Others may have worked hard for it. But despite all that, if these privileged lives you sought, you worked hard for, was to gain pleasure through indulgence in sights and sounds and smells and tastes and touch and thoughts, then despite how much money you've got in your bank account, despite how much knowledge you might have, despite how many degrees you might have to your name, PhDs or whatever, you might be a professor. It really doesn't matter. Because there's an ultimate truth which is true and universal to all beings. If you're attached to something, then you are suffering. Full stop. Think and act. And seek your freedom. That's all I have to say. Okay. So before we conclude the sermon, let us take a moment to chant the Arya Maitri. I don't have the English sheet, which I'll need if you are going to do it in English. Shall we do it in English for today because we have some visitors? Thank you, madam. Thank you. That's okay. Thank you. Can you give that to her, please? I got myself on. When we chant this Arya Maitreya, this is noble compassion. Because there may be some among you who've not done this before, it might be a new experience. Yes, we are chanting some words, but it's not the words that matter, it's the meaning behind the words that really is the essence of this. When you chant these words today, or either when I chant them and you reflect on them, you don't have to chant them, you can just reflect on them if you like. What I want you to do is to reflect on the meaning behind this. Having listened to what we had to say for the last couple of hours, when we say, may I and all beings be freed from the fire of birth. Well, if existence is meaningless, what is the point of birth that brought me this existence? When all it brought me was suffering and nothing else, what is the point then? Reflect on the meaningless, essenceless, useless, futile nature of this. And then, with that contemplation, wish for yourself and all living beings, wherever they may be, whether you know of them or don't know of them, whichever world they may be in, gods and deities and whoever, all beings are subject to this absolute truth, this universal truth. Wish well for them. Not may they be prosperous and wealthy and have a good, happy life. That's not what we're wishing for. May they also be able to understand and comprehend that the reason for their suffering is attachment. May they be able to redeem themselves from that attachment. And may they be able to observe, may they be able to experience that ultimate bliss of Nibbana. So with that determination, that resolve in mind, let us take a moment to chant the Ari Maitri Bhavana. May I and all beings in all worlds be freed from the fire of birth, freed from the fire of decay, freed from the fire of illness, freed from the fire of death, freed from the fire of sorrow, freed from the fire of lamentation, healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana, healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana, healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. May I and all beings in all worlds be freed from the fire of suffering, freed from the fire of discontentment, freed from the fire of exhaustion, freed from the fire of disappointment, freed from the fire of clinging on to the five aggregates, healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana, healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana, healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. May I and all beings in all worlds be freed from the suffering of samsara, freed from the disease of samsara, freed from the fear of samsara, freed from the fire of samsara, freed from the flames of samsara, freed from the burning of samsara, freed from the sorrow of samsara, freed from the lust of samsara, freed from the clutches of samsara, healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana, healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana, healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. The karma worlds are in despair. May I and all beings be freed from the karma worlds. The rupa worlds are in despair. May I and all beings be freed from the rupa worlds. The arupa worlds are in despair. May I and all beings be freed from the arupa worlds. All worlds are in despair. May I and all beings be freed from all the worlds. Nibbana is the only salvation. May I and all beings attain Nibbana. Nibbana is the only salvation. May I and all beings attain Nibbana. Nibbana is the only salvation. May I and all beings attain Nibbana. Letting go is the only salvation. May I and all beings let go. Detachment is the only salvation. May I and all beings be detached. Being freed is the only salvation. May I and all beings be freed. Nibbana is the only salvation. May I and all beings attain Nibbana. Nibbana is the only salvation. May I and all beings attain Nibbana. Nibbana is the only salvation. May I and all beings attain Nibbana. May I and all beings in all worlds be freed from the bondage of lust, freed from the bondage of aversion, freed from the bondage of delusion, freed from the bondage of Mara, healed with the eternal bliss of Nibbana, 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 healed with the eternal bliss of Nibbana. Okay. So before we conclude then, let us take a moment to transfer the merits that we have all acquired today to all those who deserve these merits. Think not just about the time you spent here, but also the time and effort you put into preparing yourselves to be here today. Perhaps helping someone else to be here today, perhaps providing transport to someone so that they could be here today. All that. Perhaps arranging this room so that others could come and sit down and listen to these sermons. All of that, every single thing, every little bit, every modicum of it, all that acquires heaps of merit. Merit that is absolutely essential for all of us to attain Nibbana. And that is why we have today this opportunity, because we've done merits in the past. So of course we have to continue to do merits until the day comes when you no longer have to come back here. But there are others who still are lacking in merit. So it is now time for us to transfer the merits that we have acquired to them, so that they may be able to witness these merits, rejoice in these merits, and acquire merits for themselves, so that if any of them have been born in the woeful plane, they are able to redeem themselves from the woeful plane, and then be born in the blissful plane, and once born in the blissful plane, so that they may be able to attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana for themselves. Okay. So first and foremost, let us take a moment once again, as we did at the beginning, to contemplate on the fact, to reflect on the fact that it is because of the Supreme Buddha, it is because of His infinite wisdom, His infinite compassion, His infinite concentration that we have the gift of Dhamma today. It is because of His dedication and sacrifice throughout samsara for the liberation of all sentient beings that we have the gift of Dhamma today. It is because of His effort that today we are able to enjoy the bliss of Nibbana. And it is because of the Bhikkhu, Bhikkhunis, Upasak, Upasikas who sacrificed their lives on many occasions, and as well as protected and preserved this gift of Dhamma and passed it down from generation to generation, all the way down to us. And today we have the gift of Dhamma in print form, in digital form, so on and so forth. It is thanks to their hard work, labor and toil. So may the merits that we have all acquired today be transferred to them. May they all be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired. If any of them have been born in the woeful plane, may these merits help them to be born in the blissful plane. And through the power of these merits, may they all be able to attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Also let us take a moment to transfer merits to all the members of the Mahasangha, the Bhikkhu, Bhikkhunis, who have dedicated their lives to cultivating the Dhamma for themselves, as well as disseminating this Dhamma for the benefit and emancipation, liberation of all sentient beings, the Mahanayakas, the Anunayakas of all the three chapters. As well as that, let us take a moment to transfer merits to the incumbent monks of your local temples and nunneries, the nuns in your local nunneries. Ladies and gentlemen, please take a moment to realize and recognize the fact that although you are here today, you have come here a long way to listen to this sermon and perhaps to make offerings to the Buddha, Dhamma and the Sangha. It is those monks who are in your local villages, in your local temples, who have always been there by your side through thick and thin, through rain and shine, always been there to help you, guide you, assist you and support you. They are always there for your children. It is to those temples, you send them to Dhampasana and so on and so forth. So please take a moment to reflect on the amount of dedication and commitment that they have extended to you. They, just the same as all of us, don robes to dedicate their lives to Nibbana, but today, through the infinite amount of compassion that they have in their hearts, have dedicated some of that time to your benefit, to your betterment. So may the merits that we have all acquired today be transferred to them. May they all be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today. Through the power of these merits, if any members of the Sangha who were there in the past have today been born in the woeful planes, may they be able to, through the power of these merits, be able to be freed from the woeful planes and be born in the blissful plane. Through the power of these merits, may they all be able to abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Also, let us take a moment to transfer merits to the Devas, Brahmas, spirits, demons, and the dead that we invited at the start of this sermon, as well as our ancestors, those who predeceased us in our infinitely long journey and history in samsara, those beings who may well have been our mothers, fathers, uncles, aunts, brothers, sisters, grandparents, nephews, nieces, and so on and so forth, or perhaps our teachers, not just in this birth but in our previous births, anyone who might have helped us just by offering perhaps a glass of water, or perhaps by showing us the way when we were lost, anyone who might have helped us, supported us, assisted us in any way, shape or form, may they all be able to rejoice in these merits. The Devas and the deities who have dedicated themselves to protecting and preserving the Buddha's ministry, the Sambuddha Shasana, may they all be able to rejoice in these merits. Through the power of these merits, if any of them have been born in the woeful plane, may these merits help them to be born in the blissful plane. Through the power of these merits, may they all be able to abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Also, let us take a moment to transfer merits to all those who made this event possible, who made this event a success, either by arranging this venue, or perhaps by providing the facilities for your ease and for your comfort, perhaps by offering you a glass of water, or perhaps by offering you a meal to sate your hunger, such that you are free from thirst and hunger throughout the time that you have spent here and listened to this sermon. May they all be able to rejoice in these merits. Also, let us take a moment to transfer merits to those who might have provided you with transport, or perhaps someone who might have invited you to be here, to give you the gift of Dhamma. May they all be able to rejoice in these merits. Also, let us take a moment to those members of your family that you might have left at home, those who stayed behind to allow you, to give you the freedom, to give you the chance and the opportunity to be here today. It is because they are now back at home, looking after your kith and kin, looking after your businesses, your enterprises, your workplaces, that today you have the freedom, you have the luxury to be here today and listen to this Dhamma, so that you are able to redeem yourself from samsara. So may these merits that we have all acquired today be transferred to them. May they all be able to rejoice in these merits. May through the power of these merits, if any of them either in the past have been born in the woeful plane, through the power of these merits, may they be able to born in the blissful plane. For those born in the blissful plane, may through the power of these merits they be able to abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Also, let us take a moment to transfer merits to the members of the armed forces, who, because of whose dedication and sacrifice, today we have a land, we have a country in which we can live in peace and harmony with each other, despite our differences. May they all be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today, and also, as well as that, the members of the police force who dedicated their lives, particularly back in the time when there was a 30-year-odd-long war in Sri Lanka, all those members of the armed forces and the police force who dedicated their lives, who sacrificed their lives for our peace, for our comfort, for our harmony, may they all be able to rejoice in these merits, as well as those people who might have lost their lives in the war, friend or foe, may they all be able to rejoice in these merits. As well as that, let us take a moment to transfer these merits to those people who might have lost their lives in natural disasters, natural calamities such as the tsunamis, not just in Sri Lanka but also worldwide, wherever they might have been. If anyone's looking for merits and anyone's seeking merits to be born in the blissful plane, may they all be able to rejoice in these merits, and through the power of these merits be able to free themselves from the woeful planes and be born in the blissful planes. And for all those beings born in the blissful plane, may through the power of these merits they be able to abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Also, let us take a moment to those people, men and women, who have dedicated their lives to protecting this country, preserving this country, developing this country, cultivating this country, and leading this country on our behalf. If not for them, today you and I will have to lead this country. If not for them, today you and I will have to protect this country. If not for them, today you and I will have to dedicate our time towards developing and cultivating this country. It is thanks to them that today we have the freedom, we have the luxury of time to be able to dedicate our lives to this cause. So, may they all be able to rejoice in these merits. Through the power of these merits, may they be able to abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. And finally, reflect once again for a moment about all the merits that you might have acquired throughout this day, throughout this week, or throughout perhaps this month, in your efforts to make this opportunity available for you to come along and listen to this sermon. All the efforts that you might have made to make this sermon possible and also available to all people worldwide, either by offering these recordings such as tapes and discs and so on and so forth, or perhaps in printed form, or perhaps over the internet, so that people worldwide are able to listen to these sermons and find the method to extinguish the fires of raga, dvesha and moha. May they all be able to rejoice in these merits, and through the power of those merits accumulated and amalgamated, may these merits empower and energize beings just like yourselves, men and women just like yourselves, bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, upasakas and upasikas, to once again bless this land, and for us all to be able to see and witness many hundreds and thousands of Arahatun Mahanses in our very lives itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And finally, may you and I and everyone who will have contributed, who may have contributed to this meritorious deed in any way, shape and form, way and form, be able to become one of those Arahatun Mahanses, be able to become one of those Arahat Menin Mahanses in the era of the Gautama Samma Sambrujana Mahanse itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. The members of the Mahasangha will now transfer their blessings to you. Raga ginnen midatva, dvesha ginnen midatva, moha ginnen midetva, Nibbana parama sukhayen sukhita taravetva, Nibbana parama sukhayen sukhita taravetva, mamada siyalu loka siyalu satvayo, Nibbana parama sukhayen sukhita taravetva, Nibbana parama sukhayen sukhita taravetva, Nibbana parama sukhayen sukhita taravetva. Tunduange suvisi ananta mahaguna belin siruloka siru satyayoma Nibbana paramasukein sukhita taravetva. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May I and all beings in all worlds be freed from the fire of desire, be freed from the fire of aversion, be freed from the fire of delusion. May all beings in all worlds attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.